The world has seen two global wars. The first began with a single assassination, the second with a leader who refused to stop. Today, the tensions are different, but the patterns feel familiar. In the Middle East, conflict is rising between Iran, Israel and the United States. The stakes are higher than ever. Military threats, alliances forming, and weapons more powerful than anything in history. The question is no longer if tensions exist. The question is, are we watching the beginning of something much bigger? For most of human history, wars have shaped the rise and fall of civilizations. Empires have collapsed because of them. Borders have changed because of them. Entire generations have lived through their consequences. But in the modern world, two wars stand above all others. The first was World War I and the second was World War II. Together, these two conflicts reshaped the entire planet. Tens of millions of people died, powerful empires disappeared, and the global balance of power changed forever. For decades after the end of World War II, the world lived with a constant fear that another global conflict could begin. That fear became known as the Cold War, a tense rivalry between powerful nations armed with weapons capable of destroying the world many times over. Yet, despite decades of tension, the Third World War never happened, at least not yet. Today, more than 70 years after the end of World War II, many people are once again asking a difficult question. Is the world becoming more dangerous? Across different regions of the planet, political tensions are rising. Powerful nations are competing for influence. Military spending is increasing and alliances are shifting. And in some places, conflicts between countries are becoming more intense. One region that often appears in global headlines is the Middle East, particularly tensions involving Iran, Israel, and the United States. These tensions do not automatically mean a world war will happen, but history shows something important. Major global conflicts rarely begin suddenly. Instead, they often grow slowly from political rivalries, regional wars, economic pressure, and alliances between powerful nations. And when historians look back at the early 20th century, they often notice something unsettling. Before the world plunged into World War I, many people believed a large war was unlikely. Yet, within just a few years, the world changed completely. So the real question is not just whether global tensions exist today. The real question is whether the patterns that led to the previous world wars are beginning to appear again. To understand that, we first need to go back in time, back to the moment when the first global war began. At the beginning of the 20th century, Europe appeared powerful, wealthy, and relatively stable. Great empires dominated the continent. Nations traded with one another, scientific discoveries were transforming societies, and many people believed the modern world had become too advanced for a massive war. But beneath that appearance of stability, deep tensions were growing. Several powerful countries were competing for influence and territory. Military spending was rising, and alliances between nations were becoming increasingly rigid. By the early 1900s, Europe had essentially divided itself into two major alliance systems. One side included a powerful triple entente led primarily by France, the UK and Russia. The other side was the Triple Alliance, which included Germany, Austria-Hungary and Italy. These alliances were originally designed to protect countries from attack, but they also created a dangerous situation. If one country went to war, its allies might be pulled into the conflict as well. At the same time, nationalism was spreading across Europe. Many ethnic groups wanted independence, and tensions inside multi-ethnic empires were rising. One of the most unstable regions was the Balkans in the southeastern Europe. There, the weakening Ottoman Empire had left behind a patchwork of small nations competing for power and influence. This region became a hotspot for political violence and nationalist movements. Then, in June 1914, a single event triggered the chain reaction that would ignite the entire continent. In the city of Sarajevo, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, was assassinated by a nationalist linked to the Serbian groups. The event became known as the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. What might have remained a regional crisis quickly escalated. escalated. Austria-Hungary blamed Serbia and declared war. Russia mobilized to defend Serbia. Germany declared war on Russia and France. Britain soon entered the conflict as well. Within weeks, a local political crisis had turned into a massive global war involving many of the world's most powerful nations. The conflicts that followed became known as World War I. Over the next 4 years, the war devastated Europe. New technologies like machine guns, poison gas, and heavy artillery created some of the deadliest battlefields in human history. Millions of soldiers fought in brutal trench warfare, often gaining only a few meters of ground at enormous cost. By the time the war ended in 1918, more than 16 million people had died. 4 powerful empires had collapsed, and although the fighting had stopped, the political tensions that caused the war had not truly disappeared. In fact, the way World War I ended would plant the seeds for an even larger and more destructive conflict just 2 decades later. The world had just witnessed the first global war in history, but it would not be the last. When World War I finally ended in 1918, much of the world hoped it would be the war that ended all wars. Entire regions of Europe had been destroyed, millions of soldiers and civilians had died, and powerful empires that had ruled for centuries had collapsed. But the peace that followed the war was fragile. In 1919, world leaders gathered in France to negotiate a settlement known as the Treaty of Versailles. The treaty placed heavy punishment on Germany, which had been one of the main powers defeated in the war. Germany was forced to accept responsibility for the conflict, give up territory, reduce its military, and pay enormous financial reparations to the victorious nations. For many Germans, the treaty felt humiliating. The country's economy struggled, political instability increased, and anger towards the post-war system began to grow. At the same time, the global economy was entering a period of severe crisis. In 1929, the world was struck by the Great Depression, one of the worst economic collapses in modern history. Factories closed, banks failed, and millions of people lost their jobs across Europe and the United States. Economic hardship created fertile ground for radical political movements. If you had seen my previous documentary on Germany, I talked about Adolf Hitler. So in Germany, Adolf Hitler rose to power by promising to restore the nation's strength and overturn the restrictions imposed after World War I. Hitler and his political party, which is the Nazi Party, quickly transformed Germany into an authoritarian state. They rebuilt the military, suppressed political opposition, and began aggressively expanding their influence across Europe. In 1938, Germany annexed Austria. Soon after, Hitler demanded control over parts of Czechoslovakia. European powers such as United Kingdom and France hoped that making concessions might prevent another war. But these hopes proved to be misguided. In September 1939, Germany invaded Poland. Within days, Britain and France declared war on Germany. The conflicts that followed became known as World War II. This war was even more destructive than the first. Battles raged across Europe, North Africa, and Asia. Cities were bombed, entire populations were displaced, and tens of millions of soldiers and civilians were killed. By the time the war ended in 1945, the world had witnessed devastation on a scale never seen before. But one thing had become painfully clear: global wars rarely begin suddenly. They grow slowly from political tensions, economic crises, territorial disputes, and powerful leaders willing to take enormous risks. And after the destruction of World War II, the world faced a new and terrifying reality. The next global conflict might not just destroy nations, it could destroy civilization itself, because the weapons of war had entered a new and far more dangerous era. Trust me. When World War II ended in 1945, much of the world was left in ruins. Cities across Europe and Asia had been destroyed. Millions of people were displaced and entire economies needed to be rebuilt. But while the fighting had stopped, a new rivalry was already beginning to emerge. Two powerful nations had risen from the war stronger than ever. One side was the United States, on the other side was the Soviet Union. Both countries had very different political systems, economic models, and vision for the future of the world. The United States promoted democratic government and capitalist economies. The Soviet Union promoted communist ideology and state-controlled systems. This ideological rivalry soon turned into a global competition for influence. The war that followed became known as the Cold War. Unlike the world wars that came before it, the Cold War was not defined by direct large-scale battles between the two superpowers. Instead, it was a long period of political tension, military competition, espionage, and regional conflict fought through allies. Both sides built enormous military forces and developed increasingly powerful weapons. But the most dangerous development was the creation of nuclear weapons. In 1945, the United States had already demonstrated the destructive power of atomic bombs during the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Soon after, the Soviet Union developed its own nuclear arsenal. Within a few decades, both sides possessed thousands of nuclear warheads capable of destroying entire cities in seconds. The possibility of a direct war between the superpowers became terrifying. A nuclear conflict could kill tens of millions of people and potentially devastate large parts of the planet. Several moments during the Cold War brought the world dangerously close to that outcome. One of the most serious crises occurred in 1962 during the Cuban Missile Crisis, when the Soviet Union placed nuclear missiles in Cuba just miles away from the United States. Tensions escalated rapidly. For several days, the world waited anxiously as both sides prepared for the possibility of war. Many historians believe humanity came closer to nuclear conflicts during that crisis than at any other time in history. But eventually, diplomatic negotiations prevented the situation from escalating. Over time, both sides realized that a full-scale war between nuclear powers would likely lead to a mutual destruction. This idea became known as mutually assured destruction, the understanding that if one side launched nuclear weapons, the other side would retaliate with equal force. The result would be catastrophic for everyone. Because of this balance of fear, the Cold War remained mostly a political and military rivalry rather than a direct global war. Finally, in 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. The Cold War came to an end, and for a moment, many people believed the world had entered a new era of stability. The possibility of another world war seemed distant, but history has shown that global tensions rarely disappear completely. They simply evolve, and in the decades that followed, new rivalries, new alliances, and new conflicts would slowly begin to reshape the international landscape once again. When the Cold War ended in 1991, the world seemed to enter a new era of hope. The collapse of the Soviet Union left the United States as the undisputed global superpower. Democracies and capitalism were spreading to new regions, and many believed the era of global conflict was behind humanity. But peace proved to be more fragile than anyone anticipated. Regional conflicts quickly emerged in places that had long been hotspots of tension. In the Middle East, long-standing disputes between nations flared into wars and proxy battles. Conflicts in Iraq, Afghanistan, and elsewhere drew in foreign powers and showed that even without a world war, regional wars could destabilize entire continents. At the same time, the spread of nuclear weapons added a new layer of danger. Nations like North Korea and Pakistan developed nuclear arsenals, increasing the stakes for local conflicts and making miscalculations potentially catastrophic. Economic globalization created another kind of tension. Nations became intertwined in trade and finance, which could prevent war but also create new rivalries. Competition over resources, technology, and influence intensified, with powerful nations watching each other carefully. New alliances formed and old rivalries never fully disappeared. In Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, countries continued to jockey for influence, sometimes cooperating and sometimes confronting each other directly. The 21st century also brought a digital dimension to global power. Cyber attacks, espionage, and information warfare became new tools for nations to assert dominance without firing a single bullet, though the threat of conventional war remained. By the 2010s and early 2020s, analysts began to notice patterns familiar from the past: rising nationalism, growing militarization, and tensions between two major powers. Many of the same warning signs that led to previous global conflicts seem to be reappearing, though in a modern context, and nowhere were these tensions more pronounced than in the Middle East. Countries like Iran, Israel, and the United States were engaged in a dangerous dance. Diplomatic threats, military operations, and proxy battles created an environment where a single misstep could escalate into a much larger conflict. The world was no longer simply divided by ideological blocks like in the Cold War. It was now a complex web of regional powers, global superpowers, and evolving alliances, all carrying the potential for unexpected and far-reaching consequences. The question facing the world today is simple, but it's terrifying. Can a regional conflict ignite a global one? And to answer that, we need to look closely at the Middle East, where tensions are already running dangerously high. As the 21st century has progressed, the world has seen a slow but steady increase in global tensions. These are not the same as the world wars of the past, but they share some familiar warning signs. Major powers are competing for influence in regions that were once considered stable. Economic rivalries, territorial disputes, and military buildups have created a climate where a single spark could ignite larger conflicts. Countries like United States, China, and Russia are increasing military spending, modernizing their armed forces, and expanding their influence across the globe. At the same time, smaller regional powers are becoming more assertive. Nations in the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and Asia are taking bolder actions to secure their interests. Many experts warn that these developments mirror patterns seen before previous world wars. Alliances strengthening, rivalries intensifying, and miscalculations becoming more dangerous. One particularly tense region is the Middle East. Here, long-standing disputes between Iran, Israel, and the United States have escalated. Military operations, economic sanctions, and political threats have created a situation that is volatile and unpredictable. Proxy conflicts have emerged across multiple countries. Iran-backed groups are active in Lebanon, Syria, and Yemen, while Israel continues military operations to secure its borders. Meanwhile, United States maintains a strong military presence in the region, ready to respond to threats. Beyond the Middle East, tensions between major powers in Asia and Eastern Europe are also rising. Disputes over territories, trade, and influence risk drawing multiple countries into larger confrontations. What makes today's situation especially dangerous is the speed at which information and decisions move. Modern technology allows nations to strike rapidly, making misunderstandings and miscalculations far more likely. Analysts point out that when multiple rivalries overlap, a regional conflict can quickly escalate. A clash between two nations could trigger responses from their allies, turning a local dispute into a global crisis. This is why many observers believe the world is approaching a critical point. While a global war is not inevitable, the combination of historical patterns, modern military capabilities, and political tensions make the possibility far more real than many would like to admit. In the next section, we focus on the Middle East specifically, the current flashpoint that has the potential to spiral into something much larger. If there is one region in the world that experts watch most closely today, it is the Middle East. Tensions between Iran, Israel, and the United States have escalated dramatically in recent years. Iran has been expanding its influence through military operations and alliances with regional groups. Its involvement in countries like Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen has given it both strategic depth and powerful proxies capable of striking its adversaries. Meanwhile, Israel sees Iran's actions as an existential threat. It has conducted targeted military strikes to weaken Iranian-backed forces and prevent the development of advanced weaponry. These actions, while tactical, risk provoking larger confrontations. The United States, historically Israel's strongest ally, maintains a significant military presence in the region. American forces have engaged in operations meant to deter Iran, but any misstep could quickly escalate. Adding to the tension is the uncertainty surrounding nuclear programs. Iran's continued development of nuclear technology has drawn international concern. Israel and the United States have both warned that they may take direct action if they perceive an immediate threat. The situation is further complicated by regional politics, Sunni-Shia rivalries, historical grievances, and competition over resources like oil and gas make the region a volatile mix. Small incidents, an airstrike, a missile launch, or even a political assassination can trigger responses far larger than intended. Experts warn that these tensions mirror the early stages of past world conflicts. A local crisis could escalate through alliances, drawing in other nations and potentially triggering a global response. The question is not just could a war happen, but Could a regional conflict spiral out of control? Already, analysts have identified multiple scenarios where an escalation could lead to widespread conflict. Direct confrontation between Iran and Israel, drawing in US forces. Iranian proxies attacking US interests in the region, forcing a retaliatory response. Miscalculations or accidents leading to larger military engagement. In all these scenarios, modern weaponry, including missiles, drones, and cyber capabilities, makes any conflict extremely dangerous. Unlike previous wars, the potential for rapid escalation is unprecedented. The world watches closely, aware that in a globalized era, regional conflict can have far-reaching effects on trade, energy prices, and international stability. In the next section, we examine whether a regional conflict could truly become a global war and what factors might prevent or accelerate such an escalation. History has taught us that global wars rarely begin overnight. They grow from a mix of political tensions, alliances, miscalculations, and escalating military actions. Looking at the current situation in the Middle East, it's clear why experts are concerned. Tensions between Iran, Israel, and the United States have reached a critical point. Every action, every response carries the risk of spiraling out of control. Alliances play a crucial role. Iran is backed by regional groups and maintains influence across multiple countries, creating a network that can mobilize quickly. Israel, meanwhile, has strong military capabilities and is supported by the United States, a global superpower. Even a single military incident, an airstrike gone wrong, a misfired missile, or an unexpected retaliation could set off a chain reaction. Neighboring countries could be drawn in, either by obligation to allies or by self-interest. Modern warfare also introduces new dangers. Cyber attacks could cripple infrastructure, financial systems, or military communication networks. Missiles and drones can strike with precision but also increase the risk of misjudgment. The speed of modern conflict makes it harder for diplomacy to keep pace. Beyond the Middle East, tensions between other major powers, Russia, China, and the United States, create a global backdrop where a local conflict could ripple worldwide. Trade routes, energy supplies, and strategic military locations means that even distant nations may feel compelled to respond. Yet, it's not inevitable. Diplomacy, economic sanctions, and international pressure still have the power to prevent escalation. Global organizations and alliances act as stabilizers, reminding all sides of the catastrophic consequences of a wider war. But history reminds us, caution alone is not always enough. Miscalculations, overconfidence, and rapid escalations have led to some of the deadliest conflicts in human history. The critical question remains, in today's interconnected, heavily armed world, could the sparks from a regional conflict ignite a global fire? The answer is uncertain, but understanding the warning signs, the alliances, and the history of world conflicts gives us a clearer picture of the stakes humanity faces today. As we look at the present, it becomes clear why many experts are sounding alarms. The world is no longer just watching regional conflicts from afar. Today, even localized disputes have the potential to escalate rapidly and impact millions. The tension between Iran, Israel, and the United States is more than just a headline. It is a real, evolving situation with profound global implications. Military operations, political brinkmanship, and proxy battles are creating a dangerous cycle. History offers a sobering lesson. Before both World War I and World War II, the world appeared stable. Yet, undercurrents of tension, nationalism, and alliance obligations transformed local crises into global catastrophe. Today, many of those same patterns, rivalries, alliances, and escalating threats are reappearing in new forms. Modern technology and weaponry make the stakes even higher. Missiles, drones, cyber attacks, and nuclear capabilities mean that even a misstep or a misunderstanding could have consequences far beyond the region. A small spark in the Middle East could, in theory, ignite a chain reaction, drawing in nations across the world. But it's not all inevitable doom. Diplomacy, international pressure, and global awareness remains crucial tools in preventing escalation. Every warning, every negotiation, and every attempt at de-escalation matters. The world has the power to intervene before tensions turn into open conflicts. Yet, one truth remains: the patterns of history are there for anyone to see. When countries ignore warning signs, underestimate rivals, or fail to communicate, the cost can be catastrophic. This is why awareness is critical. Understanding the dynamics of the Middle East today, the alliances that shape global politics, and the history that has brought humanity to this point is not just academic. It is essential for recognizing the fragility of peace in the modern world. The question we must ask ourselves is simple but urgent. Are we paying attention to the warning signs? And if not, will history repeat itself once again? Because in today's interconnected world, the consequences of inaction could be far greater than anyone could imagine. The world is watching and history is waiting. Yeah, so that's the story. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe because I'm trying to grow this channel and I promise the history only gets better from here. Imagine watching till the end and not subscribing. Please don't be that person. Like the video, drop a comment, and I'll see you in the next country. Bye!